Hi everyone. I'm going to wait a little bit longer for more people to join us and then we'll get started. Cool. I'll wait a little bit longer just for more people to come in, but hi for everyone who's already here. I'm doing good, thank you. I hope everyone's good as well. I'll give it a little bit longer. Cool, right, I'm going to get started now. So, hi everyone. For those of you who weren't here for the previous sessions, we did go through some algebra topics, which we're going to cover today. We're going to go through an algebra summary, and then towards the end, after we've done like a few questions on the other topics, we're going to move on to some exam technique and revision techniques. Now, just to remind all of you, if there is any topics which you go through which you find a little bit challenging, and you would like to go over those sessions again, you can go onto the MyTutor YouTube page. I think all of them are up there now from Monday to yesterday. And you can have a go, have a look at them, try out the questions, and hopefully everything will make sense. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start with summarizing the algebra topics. So let's get started with that. Right. So the first thing that we went through was expressions and formulae. So to simplify expressions, only like terms can be added or subtracted. When expanding brackets, everything inside the bracket is multiplied by everything outside. And to substitute, replace the letters with numbers and then complete the calculation. And then to rearrange formulae, we need to use inverse operations. So I've got two example exam questions based on expanding, simplifying, and changing the subject. So what I'd like you guys to do is have a go at both of these questions, and then we are going to go through the answers and how to get to the answers. All right, Natalia, you're asking about yesterday's session. So yesterday's session will be up on the MyTutor YouTube page. If you can't find it now, it should be up later, and if not, it will definitely be up by tomorrow. So just keep having a look out for it. It should be up there soon. Right, some of you are saying you can't see. I'll zoom in a little bit more for you guys. Sorry, it's a bit small. Let's move over. So if you can't read it, the first one is P plus 9 and P minus 4. So hopefully you guys can see it now. And then the bottom one is V equals U plus 5T. So have a go at the first and the second one. Got some answers for the first one. Cool, we've got a few good answers. Brilliant. And again, guys, if you do have any questions, make sure you put them in the Q&A. I'll be checking throughout the session, so answering any questions you do have. Right, cool. So we've got quite a lot of good answers there. So let's have a look at the first one. Now, we've got two brackets and we've got our expression in the bracket. So what we want to do is multiply everything in the first bracket with everything in the second one, yeah? So the first thing that we can do, let me use a smaller pen than that. So the first thing that we can do is P times P, and then we're going to do P times minus 4. And then what we're going to do afterwards is we're going to do 9 times p and then 9 times minus 4. So if we have a go at the darker blue ones, so p times p is just p squared. And then p times minus 4 is minus 4p. And then the lighter blue ones, we've got 9 times p, which is just 9p, and 9 times minus 4, which is minus 36. Now, if you left your answer like this, you would only get 1 mark. So you have to remember to simplify it. So we've got 2 terms in here which have a p in it. We've got minus 4p and we've got plus 9p. Now, if we simplify those two together, minus 4p, plus 9p is plus 5. Minus 4 plus 9 is 5. And then we can't simplify the p squared anymore, and we can't simplify the numbers anymore. So that would be our final answer, p squared plus 5p minus 36. Now, if you decided to write minus 36 plus p squared plus 5p, you still get the mark. It doesn't matter which order you put the numbers and the letters when you're adding and subtracting, as long as they're the correct sign. So you can't have a positive 36, it has to be a negative 36 for you to get the answer correct. Right, brilliant. Now, the next one is rearranging. So the first thing that we should do, the whole point of making t the subject is to get t by itself on the right hand side. So we want to isolate it. Now, remember a few sessions ago, I said the best thing to do is getting rid of the adding and subtracting terms and then doing the multiplication and division at the end. So we want to get rid of the u first. So if I'm adding u on the right hand side, I want to subtract u on both sides. So I've got v minus u, and I'm left with 5t on the right hand side. And the last thing we can do to get t by itself is to divide by 5 on both sides. So we've got v minus u over 5 equals t, and that would be our answer to get 2 marks. Right, so someone said, where did you get 5p from? Right, so we did 9 times p, which gives us 9p, and then we did the other one was p times minus 4. So when we expand the brackets, this is the entire expression that we get, and then minus 4 plus 9 gives us a positive 5. So minus 4p plus 9p gives us a 5p. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. That was expressions and formulae. Now the next thing that we did was linear equations. So remember, to remove a number, we must do the inverse operations on both sides. When there's an x on both sides, it's best to look for the smallest x or the smallest letter and move that. And when there are brackets, expand the brackets first. So I'd like everyone to have a go at this question. I am going to zoom in so you can see it a bit better. There you go. It's worth 3 marks. Let me move it over a bit more. So I'd like everyone to have a go at this one. Remember, if any of these topics are a little bit more challenging and you'd like some more help with them, do go onto the MyTutor YouTube page and have a look, because all of these sessions were covered from Monday to Thursday. Brilliant, seeing some good answers here. Cool, let's have a go at it. So if we look for the smallest letter first, so the smallest letter, in this case, we have 2y and a 6y. The smallest one between them is the 2y, so we're going to move that one. Now, to move it, we need to do the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 2y on both sides. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with 17. On the right-hand side, I've got 6y minus 2y plus 5. And then we can simplify this 6y minus 2y 6 minus 2 gives us 4. So we've got 4y there. We've still got a 17 on the left-hand side and a plus 5 on the right-hand side. Then we want to continue to solve it. So I want to get rid of this plus 5. So I'm going to subtract by 5 on both sides. So I've got 17 minus 5 equals 4y. And then 17 minus 5 is 12. So I've got 12 equals to 4y. And then the last thing to do, I want to make y isolated by itself on the right-hand side. So I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. So 12 divided by 4 equals y. And 12 divided by 4 is just 3. So y equals 3. So brilliant. Well done for everyone who got that one. Perfect. So that is linear equations. And if there is anything that you missed, make sure to watch it on YouTube. I know I'm going a little bit fast, but it's just because it's just a recap of all the other sessions. So I want to try and get through all of the different topics. Right. Simultaneous equations. To solve simultaneous equations, make the coefficients the same first. So remember, you want to look at the numbers that you're multiplying with x and the numbers you're multiplying with y. You want to make sure that those numbers are the same before you start to do anything else. Once you've made them the same, make sure that you add or subtract them to make sure that you eliminate the letter. And then you solve to find either x or y, and then you substitute that value back into one of the original equations to get the other value. So this one is a question worth 4 marks. I'll zoom in for this one as well a little bit. Right. This one is worth 4 marks. I'd like everyone to have a go at this one. So remember, first make either the x coefficients the same or the y coefficients the same, and then add or subtract to eliminate a letter, and then solve and then substitute. Okay, so if you're not too sure how to add or whether you should add or subtract, try adding. If you add the two equations together, does it get rid of one letter? If it doesn't, then do subtraction and hopefully it should. And if that doesn't, then you haven't made one of your letters, you haven't made the coefficients of one of your letters the same. So we've got some answers here already. Cool. Brilliant, we're getting some answers already. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds to have a go, and then we will go through it. Right. Perfect, right, let's have a go at it. Cool, so the first things first, let's check the coefficients of x and y. Now, the coefficients of x, we have 4 and we have 2, that's not the same. We also have 3 and minus 5, that's also not the same. So what we can do is multiply one of my equations or both of my equations by numbers to make sure that they do get to the same value. Now, the easiest thing that I could do in terms of multiplying the equations is multiplying the second one by 2. Because if I do that, 2 times 2 gives me 4. So then my coefficients for x will be the same. So I'm going to keep the top equation exactly the same. And then the bottom one, I'm going to times everything in that equation by 2, not just the x. So we'll get 4x, then we'll get minus 10y, and then 9 times 2 is 18. So that would be our second equation multiplied by 2. So now we have two coefficients of x being exactly the same. Now the next step is either to add or subtract. Now if I add all of the terms in the equations together, I'll get 4x plus 4x. Now that doesn't eliminate x, that makes it 8x. So what I want to do is I want to subtract them. So I've got 4x minus 4x, which gives me 0. So I've gotten rid of my x. Then I've got 3y minus 10y. Now remember, a minus and a minus together makes a plus. So that's 13y. Now I've got 5 minus 18. Now 5 minus 18 is minus 13. So y equals, now remember, to eliminate the 13 on the left-hand side, I just have to divide by 13. If I do that on the left-hand side, I have to do that on the right-hand side. So minus 13 divided by 13 is just minus 1. So if I put that back. So y equals minus 1. So we can put that as our answer down here for y. Now, we still have to figure out what x is. So this is the last sort of step. Now, what we can do is take any one of those equations, whether it's the top one or the bottom one, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so let's say we take the top one. We've got 4x plus 3y equals 5. Now, I want to substitute in y equals minus 1 so that I can figure out what 4x or what x is going to be. So 4x plus, and then remember, put your calculations in brackets. So we've got 3 times minus 1, because y is minus 1, equals, well, we want to find out, equals 5. Now, 4x, 3 times minus 1 is minus 3. So we've got 4x minus 3 equals 5. And then we can continue to solve for x. So I want to get rid of this minus 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I've got 4x equals 5 plus 3, which is 8. So you've got 4x equals 8. And then the last thing to do is to divide both sides by 4, because I want to get rid of that 4 and get x by itself. So x equals 8 divided by 4. So x equals 2. So you should get x equals 2 and y equals minus 1. Hopefully that makes sense. Someone asked, why is you minus? Right, because remember, we want to eliminate one of the letters, because if we still have both x and y, we can't figure out what x is or what y is. So if I was to add them, I would do 4x plus 4x, which would give me 8x. And then I've got 3y plus minus 10y, which is the same as 3y minus 10y. That would give me minus 7y. So then at the bottom, I still have x and y together. Then I still can't solve it. So the whole point of that adding and subtracting step is to eliminate one of the letters. So a situation where you would add, if I go down a bit, this is a separate question. Let's say that we've got 4x plus y equals 2, and then you've got minus 4x plus 3y equals 11. Yeah, and this is a time where you would add. The reason why is because if you do 4x plus minus 4x, a plus and a minus make a minus, so it's 4x minus 4x, and that would give me 0. So remember, you always want to get rid of either the x's or get rid of the y's. So depending on whether one is positive and one is negative, you're going to add. If both of them are the same sign, so both of them are positive, you're going to subtract. If both of them are negative, you're going to subtract. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But remember, try one. If that doesn't work, try the opposite one. So let's go on to quadratic equations. So we had a look at this one as well. So we had a look at solving by factorizing. So remember, rearrange the equation so that it's equal to 0. Always do that as your first step with quadratic equations, then you need to find two numbers that multiply to make C and add to make B, and then set each of your brackets equal to 0 and then solve for x. Now, to solve by difference of two squares, you should have an x squared minus a square number equals 0. Remember, always with quadratic equations, you set the equation equal to 0 first, and then you factorize it, set each of the brackets equal to 0, and then you solve for x. So have a go at the first one, and once you've done the first one, have another go at the second. Someone's asked, will there be a Kahoot? There will be a Kahoot at the end, but it won't be based on the recap questions that we're doing now. It'll be based on something we're going to do in a bit, in a few minutes. So it'll be based on revision and exam techniques. So someone asked, how does 3 plus minus 10 give you 13? Remember, we didn't add the equations together, we subtracted the equations. So it was 3 minus 10. So a minus and a minus makes a positive. So 3 minus 10 would be the same as 3 plus 10, which is 13. So any other sessions that will be in the future, all of you who are in the session now will be contacted by MyTutor in regards to any other future sessions. So you'll be notified, you'll know about whether there are any other sessions and when they will be. Right, so we've got quite a few answers for these questions. Let's have a go at them. So remember, if I move it over a little bit. So to this by factoring the first one, we need to find two numbers that multiply to make -8 and add together to give us -2. Now the two numbers you should have gotten was -8 and 6. If we test them out, -8 times 6 gives us -48, and -8 plus 6 gives us -2. So these are our two numbers. Now remember, we put those numbers into the brackets. So we've got a -8, so we've got -8 minus x minus 8, and then we've got a +6, so we've got x plus 6 equals 0. Now the next step is to put each of those brackets equal to 0. So we've got x minus 8 equals 0, and then we've got x plus 6 equals 0. And then we're going to solve. So on the left hand side, to solve, we need to add 8 to both sides. So we get x equals 8, and on the right hand side, we need to subtract 6 from both sides. So x equals -6. So you should get x equals 8 and x equals -6 to get full marks. Now, for the second one, for those of you who have or haven't tried it, let's have a look at it. So we've got x squared minus 100 equals 44. Now, the first thing that we should do is make sure our equation is equal to 0. So the best thing to do is to subtract by 44 on both sides before we even start to factorize and solve. So we've got x squared minus 100 minus 44 equals 0. Now, minus 100 minus 44 is minus 144. And then if we look at both of these numbers, we've got x squared and then we've got minus 144. Now 144 is a square number. It's 12 squared. So we can factorize this. So we've got x plus 12 and x minus 12 equals 0. And then just to solve, remember, set each of your brackets equal to 0. So you've got x plus 12 equals 0 and x minus 12 equals 0. And then on the left-hand side, to solve to get x by itself, you need to subtract by 12 on both sides. So x equals minus 12. And on the right hand side, you need to add 12 to both sides. So x equals a positive 12. And those two would be your solutions for this. So remember, always set your equation equal to 0 first and then solve. So someone asks, could you not do minus 6 and plus 8, or does it have to be plus 6 and minus 8? Well, if you check it, so if we do that quickly over here, just to show you, if we had minus 6 and 8, well, minus 6 times 8, that does equal minus 48, but minus 6 plus 8, it gives you 2. It gives you a positive 2, not a negative 2, and we need a negative 2. So it can't be minus 6 and 8. It has to be using the negative 8 and 6 first, and then you put it into brackets, and then you solve. Now your solution is different from the numbers that you put into the brackets, because remember, you need to put x minus 8 equals 0 first, and then work out what does x have to be equal to for x minus 8 to be equal to 0. So there's your solutions. We are now going to move on to the next section. So inequalities. So inequalities and proportion is what we did yesterday. So we're going to go through this quickly. So remember, these are your 4 signs for inequalities. You can have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. When representing an inequality on a number line, remember a hollow circle, so a circle that looks like this, represents greater than or less than, but a circle that is colored in represents greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Now, solving inequalities is very similar to solving equations, but if you divide with a negative number, you have to change the inequality sign. So remember, if you have 2 x's on both sides, like the example question, which I'd like you guys to try out, the best thing to do is find the smallest x and move that one. That way, you won't have to work with the negative numbers, and you don't have to switch around the inequality sign. So have a go at this question here. So solve 9x minus 35 is greater than 6x plus 40. Look for the smallest x and move that one first. So have a go at that one. So someone said, for the second question, can you, for the other question that we had, could you complete the square? Yes. Sort of. Yeah, you could, I guess you could. I would say don't use a difference of 2 squares, because when you complete the square, you'd have to do the square root of the number. Now, the point that I was making when I did this session on Wednesday was that if you use the calculator to do the square root, it only gives you one solution. So let's say if you did the square root on your calculator, square root of 144, your calculator will give you 12, but it won't give you minus 12. And that's where you'll lose your marks, because you need both solutions. If you do minus 12 times minus 12, negative times a negative makes a positive. So that gives you 144 as well. So you have to get both solutions, not just one. So always remember, when you're square rooting, there's a positive and a negative to it. Right, so we've got a few good answers. So the method that I used for the second question on the other slide was called the difference of 2 squares. Brilliant. Let's have a go at doing these. Right, so 9x minus 35 is greater than 6x plus 40. So remember, look for the smallest x. So we have the choice of 9x and 6x. So The smallest one is 6x, so we're going to subtract that one from both sides. Got minus 6x on both sides. So we've got 9x minus 6x minus 35 is greater than 40. Now, we can simplify this 9x minus 6x. So 9 minus 6 is 3. So we've got 3x over here minus 35 is greater than 40. Now we can continue to solve just like how we were solving equations. We can add 35 to both sides. So if we add 35 to both sides, on the left hand side we've got 3x, on the right we've got 40 plus 35. Sorry for my terrible handwriting. Now 3x is going to be greater than 75 because 40 plus 35 is just 75. And then the last thing to do is to divide by 3 on both sides. So 3x divided by 3 gives us x, and then 75 divided by 3, now that is just 25. So you should get x is greater than 25. Now someone did ask if you had, because we had the minus 35 in there, would it not change the inequality sign? It only changes the inequality sign if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. That's the only time that you change that inequality sign. There's not another time where you do that. Okay, so only when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So let's have a look at proportion quickly, and then we will have a look at exam techniques. So proportion, 2 amounts are proportional if you can multiply one with a constant and get another. Sometimes it helps to find how much one thing is worth. Now, if we have a look at this question here, I'm going to zoom in. Right. So here's a list of ingredients for making pear and almond crumble for 4 people. So have a look at the ingredients and have a read of the question. So we want to find out how much more ingredients Jessica needs to make the crumble for 10 people. Now they give the ingredients she has in the cupboard and the ingredients for 4 people. Have a read of the whole question and then have a go at it. So someone asks for the inequalities, isn't it only divide, not multiply and divide? It's both. If you can divide and it changes the inequality when you divide by a negative number, the same works for multiplication if you're multiplying by a negative number as well. So if you are still a little bit confused with simultaneous equations, go to the MyTutor YouTube page, have a look at it. I think it was Tuesday session, that one was. So I think that was session 2. So have a look for that one. Right, just for time, we're going to have a go through, this one. So let's get started. So we've got a list of ingredients. We've got 80 grams of plain flour, 60 grams of almonds, 90 of brown sugar, 60 of butter, 4 of ripe pears. So the ingredients that she does have is 250, 100, 200, 150, and 8. Now, she wants to make the crumble for 10 people. So the best thing to do is to find out how much ingredients you need for 10 people and then check whether she has enough of each ingredient in her cupboard. So what you could do is, if you have a calculator, you could divide everything by 4 and then times everything by 10, which wouldn't be too difficult. But if it was on a non-calculator paper, the easiest thing to do might just be to find out how much for 2 people and then multiply it by 5 to find how many ingredients you need for 10. So if I half everything, because half of 4 is 2, then I get 40 grams of plain flour. Just to save me from writing everything, I'm just going to draw them in lines, connecting them. So I need 40 grams of plain flour. I need 30 grams of ground almonds, 45 grams of soft brown sugar, 30 grams of butter, and 2 ripe pears. Now I can multiply each of those by 5 to work out how much I need for 10 people. So I'm going to multiply each of these ones by 5. So I've got 5 times 40 is 200. So 200 grams of plain flour. Then I've got 150 grams of ground almonds. Then 5 times 45 is 225 grams of soft brown sugar, 150 grams of butter, and 10 ripe pears that I need. Now, if I compare all of these ingredients that I need for 10 people and all the ingredients that Jessica has, well, she has 250 grams of plain flour. Now, that's more than what she needs. So she doesn't need any more of that. She's got 100 grams of ground almonds. So she does need some more because she has 50 grams less than what she needs. She's got 200 grams of soft brown sugar. So again, she has 25 grams less than what she needs. She's got exactly the right amount of butter, and she has less ripe pears than she needs as well. So your answers should be ground almonds, soft brown sugar, and ripe pears. That's the ingredients that she needs more of. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone, and that sort of covers everything that we've gone through already. Now, we are going to go on to revision techniques. So some help. A lot of you have been asking for quite a lot of help with or advice with revision techniques. I've got some here. So the first thing, I would suggest you plan your revision. Start early. That is always the best thing. As long as you start early, then you have enough time to actually revise all the things that you need to go over. When you are planning your revision, the best thing to do is to list everything you need to know for your exam and then use a traffic light system. So maybe like use a red, orange and green pen, and then mark next to the ones which you have no clue about with a red pen, ones which you're kind of sure about with the orange one, and ones that you think you're confident with a green one. And then make a timetable. That would always be helpful. Now, sometimes it's really hard to stick to a timetable, but your timetable doesn't have to be rigid. It can be, you can be a bit flexible, you can change it around a bit. What I would say is when you do make a timetable, make sure you put in breaks as well. Don't try and just do like 5 straight hours of revision at once. It's not going to be helpful. You're not going to remember anything. You're not going to see that it helps. So make sure that you plan in enough breaks in your timetable so that you can sort of have a break when you're revising. It will help you a lot more. Now, when revising, make sure you are in a limited space where it's limited distractions. Yeah, so you're in a comfortable environment. Your phone is not ringing every 2 seconds. You're not on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter every 2 seconds either. Make sure that you're in somewhere where you're comfortable, you have enough space, and no one's going to be disturbing you. Now, a lot of students, this is a point that I'd like to make. When you are doing practice questions and exam past papers and whatnot, students love to do those in practice. That's brilliant. That's amazing. It's a good way of revising. The problem is you're not marking your work. Make sure that when you are doing all of those past papers, you are marking them. Otherwise, you don't know whether you got the question right or not. And don't look at answers when you are doing the paper. Make sure that you sit down, you time yourself, and you check your answers afterwards, and you mark yourself quite harshly. Because if you mark yourself harshly, then you know what you really do need to work on a little bit more, and it will represent a little bit better how examiners might mark your work as well. So make sure you mark your work and always make a note of what you get wrong so you know what to revise. Now, revision practices, reward yourself to keep yourself motivated, whether that is maybe once in a while, like going to the cinema with your friends, obviously when the cinemas are open, or treating yourself with chocolate or your favorite snack or something like that, or watching a Netflix show, something to keep you motivated. It's really hard, even at uni for myself, when you're revising, it's really hard to sort of keep your focus, especially when you're not motivated to do it. So do little things to reward yourself to make sure that you go back to your revision and you look forward to the end result. Revision practices as well. Try not to use other people's notes. The only reason why I say that is because the best notes that you will remember are notes that you write yourself. It's really easy to read over things over and over again. It doesn't mean that you're taking it in. When you physically write it down, it helps. Practice using a calculator. That is something I've already sort of gone over in our previous sessions, but to go over it again, it might sound really silly, but we've already seen a few examples where you put numbers into the calculator, you expect to get the right answer, but if you don't put your negative numbers in brackets, you might get the incorrect answer. So always make sure that you know what the different functions on your calculator does, and you always put your negative numbers in brackets. Have group study sessions. That's always a good idea, but not all the time. It's always good to practice and revise with your friends, but don't think that that is a replacement for your own personal and private study time as well. With maths, it's important not to memorize. There's so many times students think that memorizing equations and whatnot will help them get an A or a 9 or an 8. It won't. You have to understand how to apply the questions to, how to apply your methods to the correct question. So always practice and try and understand why you're doing it. It's more important to understand why you're doing it and understand why the method works rather than just memorizing how to answer one type of question. And don't just read, practice questions, always with maths. Now, I know some questions are coming through. I'm going to read them in a second. But just to sort of go over these resources, some of you were asking some really good websites that you could use to find some things as well. Some good resources to practice maths. So your textbook and your like exercise books are great ways of finding questions which you're looking for. At school, you use textbooks, you write down questions in your exercise book at school as well. Use those, practice those questions which you haven't gotten right, go over them again, see if you can get them, correct after you've tried it. Past papers, this is for edexcel only. For edexcel past papers, go to qualification.pearson.com. If you're doing AQA or OCR, then you go to those websites, so AQA and OCR, to find those past papers. Good websites for everyone. Obviously MyTutor is really good if you're looking for a tutor or you're looking for like revision courses and whatnot. MyTutor YouTube page and the MyTutor website is great to go to. Also mathsgenie.co.uk, those are good for questions. Khan Academy is good for videos. Corbett Maths is also good for questions, and so is Maths Made Easy. But I think depending on the websites that you go to, some of them ask for you to pay for some of the resources, but majority of the ones that I've listed here, I think are free. YouTube is a great way. Google, literally just Google a type of question, just put GCSE at the end, you will find a ton of resources for you to try with answers as well. And ask your teachers, your tutor, or your friends as well. See what everyone else is using, see where else you can find other resources to get help. Now, exam techniques. Someone asked me, do you have to do questions in order, or do you have to start from the back of the paper and work forward? It's completely up to you, whichever one works best for you. If you think that starting with the harder questions first and getting all the long questions out of the way makes it easier to keep up with your timing, that's fine. Some people find it to start at the beginning and work their way through. That's also fine. There is no correct way of answering the exam questions. Make sure you check your answers. That's probably the most important thing that you could do in your exam. Also, make sure it makes sense. If the question is something like how tall is a tree, your answer is not going to be 0.2 centimeters. So if that's what you get, then you should definitely check your answer again, because it doesn't make any sense. Don't scribble out incorrect work. Put one line through it. One thing students don't know is that if you don't leave an answer for your question in an exam, but you have working out and you've crossed it out, examiners will look at the crossed out working and give you marks if it is correct. So if you scribble it out, they can't read it and you've lost marks which you might have gained. So only put one line through your working out, okay? Practice a lot of questions and past papers. Make sure you mark them. I've already talked about that. If you struggle with timing, a good way to help you with timing, look at how many marks each of the questions are worth, and that should help you with timing. Try and stick to a minute a mark. So if it's worth 2 marks, give yourself 2 minutes to answer the question. That should help you stay in time. Now, read questions carefully. There are command words in every single question in the GCSE paper. Now, command words include things like sketch, plot, draw. Those are all different. They mean different things. Sketch means it doesn't have to be accurate. You just have to put the important coordinates, like where it crosses the x-axis, where it crosses the y-axis. Plot means an accurate plot, and draw means you have to draw it accurately using the grid that they give you. Calculate, state, write, and estimate are again all different. Calculate, they'll give you an equation, you calculate it. State means that it's something easy that you can just see or that you can find. You don't have to necessarily calculate something, and it's only really worth 1 mark, those sort of state and write down questions. Estimate means that you have to round your numbers and then calculate. So it's a little bit different from just calculating. Make sure you leave your answers in the correct form, simplest form, 1 decimal place. Make sure you read that in the question. Make sure you check your units. This is always a mistake everyone always makes. Always look at units and always look at the number of marks each question is worth, because it's a hint to how much working out you need to do. If it's worth 5 marks and you've written down 1 line, you've probably not gotten 5 marks. So always check. Now, before we go on to this quiz, we are going to have a look at some examples of best practices for revision and exam techniques. Show all of your working. Now, make sure your answer is written in a clear and organized way. If you can't work out where you have gotten some of your answers from and you can't follow your own working out, no one else is going to be able to do that. So make sure that it's very clear and organized, because if an examiner can't read it, he or she is not going to mark it. And it's going to be really hard to give you marks, even if you deserve it, if it's unreadable. Write your steps in order and not all over the place. If you write your answer at the top corner and then you're working out in the middle and to the top left and the bottom right and whatnot, you can't follow it. So I don't know where you've gotten that. I don't know how this links to that. And again, it can make you lose easy marks, which you wouldn't have lost if you just wrote everything in order. And don't do answers in your head, write everything down. If you've done something wrong in your head, then when you come back to check it, you can't check whether you've done it right or not. So let's say you do something simple like 2 times 3. Everyone knows how to do 2 times 3 in your head, but on an exam day, you might be nervous and you might say 7 instead of 6. So you've written your answer down, but there's no actual working out. Now, you get method marks in your exam. So if you write down 2 times 3, that will probably give you a mark, even if you don't put down 6 on the answer and part of the question. So always make sure that you are writing down all of your working, and don't do this. I can't read this, you probably can't read this. No examiner is going to even want to read this. So make sure that it's very simple, very concise, and it's not all over the place, and it's organized. Now, the last thing before we go on to this quiz is a really, really helpful way to make sure that your writing is a little bit easier to read, is to write with space. Writing slower will slow you down in the exam, so you'll run out of time. Writing quickly just makes it even harder to read. Writing really bunched up together makes it even worse. So the best thing to do, rather than slowing down, I would say write with space. Both of these lines are written exactly the same way. The only thing that's changed is that I've separated each of the words. So if you try and read the first one, it's really difficult, but the fact that the second one is separated quite nicely with space in between each word makes it a lot easier to read. So you don't have to necessarily slow down, just write with more space and it will make it easier to read. Right, so what we're going to do now it's time for Kahoot. So while I'm answering some of your questions, I'd like you guys to log into Kahoot, put in the pin, and we'll do a quick quiz, and then we'll finish the course. So let me have a look at some of these. Someone said another good revision technique is to book a MyTutor lesson. Well, yes, if you do need a tutor and if you do need some help and guidance, you need to have someone to help you, then definitely check out MyTutor. I'm on there. There's loads of other amazing tutors on there as well who are willing to help. So have a look, have a browse, find the best person who works who does techniques that work for you. So someone said, do you know of any good maths YouTube channels? In general, I think Khan Academy is my preferred one, but there are a few other ones, so just try them out, see whichever ones you prefer. I mean, I don't use YouTube channels as often as some of you guys might. So maybe if you have any good suggestions, put them in the chat, let everyone know what you're using. That would be really helpful. Someone said, do you have any tips to learn faster? I would say there's probably not any tips that you can learn faster, but to effectively revise, what you could do is do the traffic light system. So don't focus on things which you're already confident on. Obviously go through a few questions to make sure that you are still confident with them, but look at things which you find more challenging and try to see whether after revision it makes a little bit more sense, and practice those questions a lot more, and that should help you revise more effectively, but not necessarily faster. Right, I'm going to start the Kahoot. Remember, the pin is at the bottom. So if you haven't logged in, you do want to, you can still log in afterwards. So let's start, and I'll still answer these questions as we're going through. Right, when in an exam, which is the best practice to make your writing clearer? Now, someone said in the top right, you wrote, ask for help when you need it. Yes, if you're revising and there's just something which you cannot get around your head, ask your teacher. If you need a tutor, ask a tutor. Always ask for help. Brilliant, write with space. That is the best thing. You write slower, you might run out of time. So the best thing to do is just write with space. You don't have to write slower, you don't have to write less, you don't have to write even smaller. Writing smaller will make it even harder to read. Just write with space. Right, so brilliant. Next, well done for the top 5. Right, quickly use a calculator to find x squared when x is -4. Calculator techniques. Good websites for maths, chemistry, physics, and biology questions, right? Science, excluding maths. I think physics and maths tutor is quite good for GCSE, but there's no GCSE on there for maths. Right, yes, it should be 16. Think about -4 times -4. It's going to be a positive number. So it should be positive 16. Remember, negative numbers in brackets when you use the calculator. So well done for the top 5. Right, next one. Which is a better approach to learning maths? So yeah, and what I was saying before, physics and maths tutor is good for science GCSE, because they have quite a few GCSE science questions on there. The only thing is physics and maths tutor does not have maths GCSE, only maths A level. So chemistry and physics and biology from physics and maths tutor. Understanding what you're doing. Right, if you memorize it, you only know how to answer that particular question, or you only know that particular equation. If you only ever do past papers, you're not doing practice papers. Past papers are limited, and especially for your past paper, for your specification, I think there's only 2, because obviously there wasn't one last year. And don't rely on your calculator, because what happens when you're in a non-calculator paper? So always understand what you're doing. So brilliant. Well done for the top 5. Right, true or false? Right, I should push through my revision regardless of whether I'm tired or heavily distracted, and I should never change my schedule for anything. Someone said they like to have their notes nicely decorated, and that motivates them and it keeps them happy without stressing. That is a brilliant way of making sure that you can read your revision notes and not get stressed from it. Colorful, highlighted, bold, anything like that, making it easy to read. That's brilliant. Perfect false. If you are tired, if you're heavily distracted, the best thing to do is not just to push through revision, because you're not going to remember anything. The best thing to do is to change up your timetable a little bit, or move things around so that you have a time where you're comfortable revising and you don't feel like you're being pushed and forced into it, because then it's not effective. So brilliant. Well done for the top 5. Right. Next one. Which would be the best thing to do in this scenario? It is a week before your maths exam and you feel confident about everything apart from simultaneous equations. Right, so adjust revision questions so you spend enough time on this topic and others. That's brilliant. If you only focus on simultaneous equations for that entire week, there's a few scenarios which could happen. It could come up and you know exactly how to do it, but now you've forgotten how to do everything else. Or it might not come up at all and you just spent 7 days trying something that didn't come up in the exam. So the best thing to do is not only focus on just one topic you find difficult, just move your revision schedule around so you spend enough time on it to make sure that you understand it to get marks in the exam, but you're also making sure you're keeping on top of everything else. Right, brilliant. Well done, everyone. Next one, I should. Now, the answers are below: the red, blue, yellow, and green. I should only revise by myself and never ask for help. And then the others. Have a look. I'm going to have a look at some more questions. Right, the Edexcel Maths Past Paper link was qualifications.pearson at pearson.com. Yeah, so just type in Google Edexcel Past Papers and it should come up on Google. Brilliant. None of the above. Don't ever only revise with your friends, because sometimes if you ask your friends for help, they are good people to ask as well, just to sort of link minds and whatnot, but also they could be wrong. Only ever revise by yourself and never ask for help. If you never ask for help, you'll never improve, especially if you don't know how to do something. And never revise because you pay attention in class and get extra tuition. Well, that definitely won't always help. I mean, it's good that you pay attention in class. It's good that you're getting extra tuition to help you with the things that you're not too confident with, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't revise. You do still need to revise. So brilliant. Next one. There's only one way to effectively revise, and it is not dependent on the person. Someone asks, should you try other exam board past papers? Well, if you feel like you might benefit from that, yes, but also bear in mind different past papers have different specifications. So I would only suggest you do that if you're 100% certain with knowing what you need to know for your own personal exam. Because then you might do something else and you realize, oh, I don't know how to do it. Then you spend time trying to do it and then you realize you didn't need to know how to do it anyways, because it's not for your exam board. Right, brilliant, false. Effectively revising depends on the person. It definitely does. You might like to revise using notes, practice papers. Make sure you know how to revise for yourself. It's not about how other people revise, it's how you best revise. When making notes to help me remember things more effectively, I should. So what do you think for this one? Right, for the Edexcel past papers, some of them might ask you for a username and password. That's only the exam papers which they haven't released for everyone. The past papers from 2017, 2018 are available to you. The ones that won't be will probably be the ones from last year because you couldn't have an exam. And I think the ones from 2019, they haven't released either, so you can't access those. So at the moment, you only have 2 which are available to you, but the 2019 one should be available in a couple of months. Now, all of the above, make it colorful, condense the information, don't have too much in one section, underline, highlight, write things in bold, do all of these things, and it will help you to effectively make notes that you can revise from. Yeah, do all of them, not just one. Oops, sorry, I went a bit too quick. Right. Which best describes why you should reward yourself with a favorite snack or activity? So someone asked, would it help to switch things up while you're to keep you motivated for maths revision? Definitely. Don't sometimes a lot of students get so caught up with, okay, I'm just going to stick with simultaneous equations today. I'm just going to do quadratic equations tomorrow. Mix it up. Do something that you like with something that you don't like, and then keep doing that. And then you'll see that you're improving and it's helping you to remember things and you're not getting bored too easily. Right, you might get hungry, but that's not the reason why you should treat yourself with a favorite snack or activity. It might help you remember things, but the reason why you should do it is to keep you motivated. The whole thing is about keeping you motivated to keep doing the work. So brilliant, well done for the top 5. We're nearly done. So sketch, plot, draw all mean exactly the same thing in the maths exam. Right, there's some brilliant suggestions in the chat and in the Q&A as well for different techniques other people are using. That's brilliant. Right, false. It is false. Sketch, plot, and draw mean different things. Sketch is a rough sketch, just put the important coordinates. Plot and draw are more accurate. So well done for the top 5. Right, second to last question. You should look at how many marks each question is worth, because have a look at all of the different scenarios you have below and pick the correct one. Which is the hardest exam board? I don't think there's like a hardest exam board particularly, because bear in mind with maths, when you look at the specifications, they're very, very similar. There's maybe like a few things which are different. So there's not that much difference with the maths exam, but with sciences and the other exams you take at GCSE, they do differ a little bit. So be careful with those, but I don't think there's a hardest one. All of the above. It tells you how much working out is needed, and to help you keep time, you should stick to a minute a mark as well. So all of the above, brilliant. Last question, well done for the top 5. Right. If I do not think my answer is correct in an exam, I should. Right, let's see how many more questions I can answer. Right, someone asked, are old papers like the 2015 ones good practice? Yes, they are. The only thing is the specification has changed. So again, when you are doing those questions, make sure you know what you need to know for your exams. So only do it if you know what you need to know. If you're going through them and you see something you've never seen before, it's quite likely it's not part of your specification. Also, it doesn't include topics which have been added to the new specification. So be very, very careful. And the best thing to do is use practice questions. I would say leave past paper questions until when you're further down the line with revision. Now this one, put one line through it. You scribble it out, they can't read it, you can't get marks. You rub it out, again, it's gone. You can't read it, you can't get marks, yeah? You shouldn't even have Tipex in an exam, let alone be using it. So the answer is put one line through your work. Now, that is the end of the quiz and it's the end of the sessions. So well done, Zoe, for coming in third place. Well done, Poppy, for second place. And first place is Malika. So well done to the top three, and well done for the runners-up, Zay and Katie. I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. I've tried to answer as many questions as I could as we were going through, but if there is any questions that I haven't answered, hopefully I've answered them through the other sessions as well. Right, so I hope all of you guys found it really helpful. Remember, all of these sessions, including this one, will be on the MyTutor YouTube page. So you can go back, look over everything and make notes if you want to, and rewatch it again if you need to. It's been amazing tutoring you guys. And I hope all of you enjoyed it as much as I have. And thank you for all the compliments along the way. So I hope to see you guys soon, but it's a bye for now. So see you guys.